And I want to put up this graphic here, and then we'll talk about some of the head coaching openings that are still available, because I don't know, Lucas.
We were talking about it.
He could stay. I can't believe I'm saying it. Here you go. 2023 Associated Press. Excuse me. Associated Press. Sorry, it was small letters there. Associated Press. Assistant Coach of the Year finalist, Ben Johnson. Which, yeah, we know.
Listen, we talked about this before the show. If you really break down the vacancies that are available, what did we say? We said Washington and Seattle, only vacancies right now.
Yep.
Mike Vrabel, Pete Carroll, and Bill Belichick. Mm-hmm. So you got to assume, and that's hard. That would be really hard for me, even if I'm Washington, who Ben's pinned to right now, and everybody, I think it was Boomer Esiason. He was like, yeah, it's a done deal already, which I don't know if you need to take that as like the word of truth. Apparently, Boomer Esiason's making his way out of the shadows and talking football again. But anyways, if Boomer Esiason's saying that, take it with a grain of salt. But if you're the Washington Commanders, especially with the new ownership, are you really going to pass up an opportunity to get Bill Belichick? And keep in mind, Washington's defense was dead last last year. Dead last. Yeah. It was worse. The secondary was even worse than the Lions this year. So you can get Bill Belichick, and he can coach up a rookie quarterback, or he can bring in Ben Johnson. Now, both are attractive options, but which one is more guaranteed? And that doesn't even saying that if Ben Johnson is looking at like the Commanders or Seattle, do I really want to go between one of those two? Especially by the time the season's over, Seattle might hire somebody. I mean, if Mike Vrabel comes pounding at your door, it's hard to turn him down. Well, so that's an option there. But does Ben want to go to those places, or does he want to learn and get better? Ben Johnson's not going to get worse as an OC. He's only going to get better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, at least for Dan Quinn, he's done multiple interviews with Washington, I believe. He's on like his second or third interview. I have to double check. Shout out to Broder, by the way. Broder joining. Proud of the boys. Proud of you guys. Broder, my guy, the GOAT.
From the night show.
But yeah, to the point about Ben Johnson of Washington, I know that Dan Quinn's taken some interviews, and if I'm Washington, like to your point, like if I need a culture change, like we already know what's been happening with Washington. You're getting off Ron Rivera. At least for me, I'm always going to go with the offensive mind, especially one like Ben Johnson. That's just how I think when I'm hiring a head coach, especially when you have a young quarterback and you're going to draft another quarterback. But let's look at it from Washington's perspective. They probably want like a culture changer, right? Like you're going to get somebody like a Dan Quinn, a Bill Belichick.
They need one.
Yeah, they need one. So maybe even you get a Dan Quinn, or maybe Seattle is looking at a Dan Quinn. I'll tell you one thing, and I got to give credit to one person on this because they called this. Is Adam Baydoun. Ben Johnson is Seattle. I think Seattle with Ben Johnson is number one, organizationally, it has to be attractive to Ben. And that team is stacked.
You're right. But then this is where I go, does Ben want to go there? Because if you're Ben, do you want to have Geno Smith for one? And I'm not saying that Geno Smith's terrible, but they're not in a position to get a new quarterback. And do you want to go up against Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers twice a year fighting for a division? So do you really want to – and I'm not saying that that's a guarantee, but this is the thing with Ben. It's like, would you rather do that? Or would you rather go chase another Super Bowl, especially if they fall short and he's motivated? Right. Do you want to go win another Super Bowl with Detroit? I think Aaron Glenn's a lock to stay at this point. There's no way.
Yeah, well – and I know people mention it, right? I'm going to put some comments up. Shout out to everyone joining, like Spenmo. By the way, check out Spenmo's new show, Spenmo Rack Speaks.
Oh, yeah.
He does been grinding over there. Oh, yeah. Man's been grinding. So give him some love there. Look at Booner. I love Dan Campbell. There you go. So I want to mention for Ben going to Seattle, another reason why, and Jesse brought this up, is organizationally they draft so well. Like and they have, don't they have, and I know Jesse brought this up, they have 2 first-rounders this year still, Lucas. That's still from the Rush trade, right? They still have picks from that trade?
Oh, yeah. Bro, you and Adam's Denver Broncos. Yeah, they sold their soul for Russell Wilson.
I took an L. Jared
Stidham was taking snaps this year. That one of the worst trades in NFL history.
I took an L on that. I'll admit it.
Fair.
I'll admit it. But I think Ben Johnson to Seattle makes the most sense. I do. I think it's a great hire. Now, is there a chance you get to keep both your coordinators? Maybe. I think more likely you're going to keep an Aaron Glenn. Which is fine.
Day by day, the odds are going up for them keeping Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn.
Yeah, because
think about like how long Bieniemy, and I know they're two different people, 2 different stages. Think about how long Bieniemy stayed in Kansas City for. It's because they're winning. It's like, do you really want to risk it all when you're the you're considered the number one OC in the NFL to just
Right.
possibly flame out. And I think it'd be hard for him to flame out in Seattle. I really do, because to all your points that you were saying. But it's just, again, and even like McVay. Do you want to go up against McVay twice a year? Like, you don't like.
Well, hold on.
He would arguably be the third best. Yeah, I would say Jonathan Gannon is below Ben Johnson right off rip. Shots, explosive. But Ben Johnson would be the third best head coach of that division off rip.
Let me tell you something.
Let's hear it.
If I'm Seattle,
mm-hmm.
if I'm Schneider, then I'm thinking, I'm looking back, I'm seeing the Rams, right? I'm seeing the 49ers. And I'm saying, okay, I'm like, how am I going to compete with these guys? Like, you got Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, the two, arguably two of, if not one of the brightest offensive minds. Tell me why I shouldn't get Ben Johnson.
Hey, I'm not saying he shouldn't. I'm not saying it, but it sounds like it sounds like you just want Ben gone now. You want to see him thrive in Seattle.
No, I don't. No, because Seattle's had our number. I don't want Ben to go there. But doesn't that make sense? Like, if you're Seattle, you're like, I want this guy to go toe-to-toe with these two guys.
It makes complete sense. I just want Ben to stay in Detroit. That's all.
That's all.
That's all it is. That's all it is.
You know what? Actually, I wouldn't even hire Ben. Actually, he hates babies and he hates puppies. So I wouldn't even hire him. Honestly, yeah, that guy's a terrible human being.
We got to keep him in Detroit, man.
That's
but
just
I think where people kind of, and it's not everybody, but I think people get to the point where they completely discredit Dan's coaching ability if Ben leaves. I don't think the Lions offense would be at the same point off rip, but at the same time, like, Dan Campbell has a lot to do with this offense as well. He's an offensive minded coach. He knows the in and outs of this offense. So when Ben leaves, if the Lions kind of have like a stuttering moment in the first month of the season after Ben leaves, I expect that. But I also expect Dan, being the former player and just the recognition that he has on the game, the recognition, he's going to be able to respond and figure out a way and make a way for this Lions offense and keep going on the track that it was.
Yeah, and I think if you're Ben, like, you're in one of the best situations. I mean, like, for Ben especially, I mean, look at the offense. You have Jared Goff, who's going to be under a contract extension. Excuse me. You have one of the best wide receivers. You have one of the best tight ends as a rookie. You have one of the best offensive lines, if not the best offensive line. Like, it's a pretty good situation. Excuse me, they're number one. But look, you got a pretty good situation. So if you're Ben, you're sitting there going like, maybe he's not a huge fan of Seattle. Maybe he's not a huge fan of the Commanders. He can wait, like Sean said. You could, and like you've been saying, you could wait one more year and just,
because I don't see a way that either Mike Vrabel or Pete Carroll are sitting at their couches this offseason. Now, obviously, they'd find some type of coaching job, but as far as not being a head coach, I mean, like, even like people like New Orleans, you're going to look Dennis Allen in the face when you could have Mike Vrabel.